October 13th, 2020. This was the day that the company ELO acquired the biggest hub of speedrunning from PAC, its creator. And that hub is Speedrun.com. With no time to waste, let's dig into how such a prominent website fell from grace in such a short period of time. And trust me, there's a lot. So for anyone out of the loop, what is Speedrun.com? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me give you a very sped up history lesson, since I've briefly talked about this a couple times already. Let's talk about 3 different ways people used to keep track of speedruns, and then let's dive into the behemoth itself. Number 1. Twin Galaxies. Heading back to the late 90s and early 2000s, speedrunning was in its infant stages. Twin Galaxies, who had been keeping track of video game high scores since the 80s, saw this fun and wacky thing called the internet and went, hey, we should probably get on this new World Wide Web wizardry. Twin Galaxies established a wide variety of scoreboards, and like every other website in the 2000s, made a forum section for users to post messages about a wide array of topics. Over the years, Twin Galaxies just kind of became the boomers of competitive gaming. Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. Glitches were viewed as a sin, and having some of your top players be infamous liars and downright criminals probably wasn't the best look. Number 2. Speed Demos Archive. Around the same period, you got Speed Demos Archive, which by 2004 started expanding its site to host a wide variety of games, which definitely beat the pants off Twin Galaxies. But it wasn't really perfect. Instead of having any kind of leaderboards, over the years it was more viewed as a place to view some of the best runs at the time, and while it's a great resource, it kind of feels like a private elite club when looking back at just the leaderboard aspect of it. I guess really this site was never meant to fully serve the purpose we're talking about today. Number 3. Spreadsheets and wikis. What did serve the purpose of leaderboards was good old-fashioned numbers. Your best bet back in the day was honestly just making a spreadsheet. Some communities eventually though would end up making their own wiki pages where players can manually add their own times. Basically community spreadsheets. One that I am very familiar with is the SMW wiki, which by 2011 was already quite established. Most of these leaderboards were both very inaccurate and lacking in detail. For example, I found a screenshot of the SMW wiki leaderboard in late 2011 where the 96 exit record appears as a 132.46, when nowadays we know that since 2005 there was a 131 time. Pretty much any leaderboard at the time relied on the honor system, and that really wasn't the biggest issue because speedrunning wasn't too mainstream yet. But then we fast forward to 2011 when Wait, that's 1999. Let's move it forward. Keep going. Please skip that. One more. And there we are. Speedrun.com. In October 2014, we get the earliest glimpse of the site we would know today. But that isn't actually when it started. Digging through the creator of Speedrun.com's post, Hack, we can find possibly the first ever post on the site labeled March 13th, 2014. This forum post is under the GoldenEye 007 community, with him asking others to be patient and be testers for what at the time was a brand new site that he had been crafting since the year prior. This has led to the common misconception that Speedrun.com was originally made just for GoldenEye 007 leaderboards, which is 100% false. You can see before the month was even over that Pac and others had already been posting forum threads under both Half-Life and Grand Theft Auto, so clearly that rumor you may have heard about isn't true. Going back to the site capture in October of 2014, while it wasn't captured correctly, you can figure out that the site was not playing around. It already had every notable title you could think of, from the Mario, Sonic, Crash, and Spyro series, to Minecraft and Super Meat Boy, and even games that you wouldn't think would be added first, such as Shrek 2. With speedrunning starting to slowly rise in popularity, but still being a bit off from its first notable peak, at least in my opinion, Hack had finally created something that solved a lot of issues for many people: centralized leaderboards. While certain communities over time have preferred to stick to their own leaderboards, and still do to this day, because of reasons that we'll talk about later, in general, this one site obsoleted having to upkeep leaderboards on individual wikis and local spreadsheets. This also allowed anyone in the world to request their own leaderboard to be hosted on the same exact website as everyone else. You can now have one account that kept track of all your runs and leaderboards in one single place. and honestly, that was quite amazing. Now I hope that was enough Speedrun.com history for you, because I'm going to go quite fast here and speed you up to where things really don't get that pretty. Being a member since early 2015, I feel like I can do an alright job of explaining the site's developments, but hey, maybe Joe Commenter 85 will tell me everything I got wrong in the comments. Please do so now. Alright, you wrote it? Alright, well while we are very shortly about to dig into how the site got rapidly worse in such a short period of time, I will preface it by saying that the site was never perfect at all. Over the years, there have been all sorts of little bugs, as well as the site not being able to handle traffic at certain times, and I get it, the site isn't some big company like Google or Microsoft, but at a certain point, improvements need to be made. Two of the biggest problems that I've had for such a long time was 1. Formatting milliseconds on runs, which has always been a pain in the butt. Half the time, for example, if I inserted 20, which meant I wanted a .200 time, nope, that's not what it took. It would literally change it to .020, but you wouldn't know that until after you already submitted the run. And the second issue that I've had is, especially now as someone who often likes to dive into record histories, and now also does it as a living, how am I supposed to use this graph? Any leaderboard that has more than 20 categories just has a completely broken chart. I'm no programmer, I quit computer science for a reason, but I can't imagine adjusting charts would be that hard. Let me know if I'm somehow wrong. Getting to 2019 and especially 2020, the site was becoming more and more unstable, with frequent errors or just full-on site glitches being a regular site. And be aware, this was already happening before the start of the
insert global event the film industry pretends never happened here.
With the site's infrastructure both looking and operating virtually the same 6 years later, there was really only so much longer that things were going to continue how they were. And the only good thing that was added to the site, in my opinion, really, was email sign-in authentication after the site got hacked both in 2018 and 2019, which younger me cared enough to make a video on both times for some reason, but 2020 is really where things hit the fan. Here is why you clicked on this video. October 13th, 2020, Speedrun.com tweets out, "Big news for SRC." And was it big news? I mean, yeah, but was it great news? That's debatable. Pack, who started Speedrun.com 7 years prior, after all this time finally made a deal with a company named Elo, who acquired the site and took over the entire front and back end of it. So what is Elo? To this day, I still really don't fully know. I feel like that I, nor most other runners, have never really heard of them before, but searching their site, they apparently have been helping the esports industry with data and analytics since 2001, or ever since I was born. Let me know if that makes any of you feel young or old, cause I have no clue sometimes who watches me, but anyways. Their front page shows that they currently manage websites for Dota, Overwatch, and Valorant, so that's cool I guess. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about these games. And it's also a slight nitpick, but they say that Elo has built some of the most recognizable websites for competitive gaming and esports, and then they list Speedrun.com. And I get that they own and manage the site now, but y'all didn't build that. But we'll put that aside. One of Elo's big promises for the site was a bunch of bug fixes, so I mean, at least we have that to look forward to, right? Easyscape, shout out to my man, notably had a 20-minute interview with Elo's project manager, and while the whole interview was fine, it kind of felt like any other interview featuring someone representing a company, which is basically a whole lot of happy words to make people think things are good, even if they may not be. By November, the company made themselves nice and cozy, and they just straight up gave every single user donation perks since they removed the donation feature. For anyone unaware, you previously were able to get custom badges or username colors if you made a one-time donation, which helped the site keep running, and I guess turning this off wasn't the worst thing in the world. In the next 2 months following this is when these people would really start to get me, and probably a lot of other people's blood boiling. In 2016, Speedrun.com introduced a really cool section of the site under speedrun.com/users. You could sort users by different locations, and my favorite part was the most games played and most categories played leaderboards. Sadly, these boards were not archived properly, and maybe I'll have screenshots that I can dig up here. You used to be able to see across the entire site who had speedrun the most amount of games, as well as categories across any game. This personally got me really motivated to speedrun new games, and I can even find a couple old pastebin documents talking about how I really wanted to get on the top 10. And it looks like at my peak, I was only 25 games away from tying 10th place on the most games board. And I could be wrong here, but I tried my hardest to see if ELO or Speedrun.com ever made any announcements of removing this, but I literally can't find a single mention. They kinda just quietly removed this and hoped no one cared. Was this feature essential? No, not at all. But did it make the site more lively and fun? I personally would say so. In the early months of 2021, most of the new updates were relatively tame, with both the site logo and layout getting a slight update, and they also had articles spotlighting different communities and having a more documented knowledge section, answering beginner questions, and this is all nice I guess, but at the same time, they really weren't listening to anyone. There was still bugs galore, and people were kinda starting to not get too happy. And before we get to all the egregious crimes ELO committed over the next year, I do want to quickly point out a couple of what the kids call W's. The first one being finally fixing the millisecond prompt. And I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but this was a very much needed fix. Do you know how many times I've moderated runs where I've had to go and edit them just to change the milliseconds because they didn't get entered properly? Now when you type in 2 digits for a time, it gives you a prompt where you can click which one you actually meant, so that's a nice little touch. And the second W they had was revolving a YouTube update in July 2021 that out of nowhere privated a lot of previously unlisted videos made before 2017, unless the user opted out using a form. They actually made a tool for any user that warned players of both their own runs and runs across games they moderated that may possibly be at risk. I personally used this myself, and while I didn't need to change that much, it was definitely nice. And honestly, those W's only did so much because in early July around the same time, multiple people also noticed that the site sneakily modified the Creative Commons clause in their terms of service, which in human language means that communities on the site technically had no official ownership of their leaderboards anymore. After being caught in plain sight, just one day later they did the typical company PR stunt by reversing the change and saying a bunch of word salad to make them look like they really care about the community. And can we talk about how they did it during the same week as Summer Games Done Quick, the biggest speedrun event ever? Now, I'm not saying they wanted a perfect time for everyone to be distracted, but it wouldn't be the most far-fetched thing I've said today. So now that I've drained every ounce of happiness out of myself for today, let's start to munch into some of the things that really dug the site under the ground. September 21st, the first Mod Hub update. Wait, whoa, what is this? After celebrating my 20th birthday, I logged on and I was so confused at what I was looking at here. I went to go moderate runs, and I just didn't even know what to do for a minute. I have so many gripes with this layout change, and I don't even know where to start. I will give it to them that there are a lot of solid improvements here, such as displaying all the games on the left, and the actual submissions all having video embeds with all these runs info, but this still feels so incomplete? I'd say at least 50% of the runs I moderate, I eventually have to edit the run anyways, whether it's modifying the time or a variable that wasn't selected properly. So while it's nice that everything is displayed on this one page, I still just as frequently have to go between the pending runs page and individual runs themselves. And I feel like due to that factor alone, I already prefer the older layout a million times more, because at least I can see more of the runs in the list at once. I actually know what to expect. What's annoying is ever since this update, you now need to have the link for the old moderation page saved, because clicking on the main tab now just gives you this monstrosity. And every time you go to the top of the old page, it tells you to use the new exciting moderator hub, which no, I really don't want to use, thank you. You know, why can't you just go in the settings tab here and toggle which layout you want to use? Would that be that hard to make? Let me know which layout you prefer and how wrong or right I am. And either way, I think you can agree that both the layouts have many shortcomings, and the site had way bigger priorities to fix. And if you think this change is insignificant, then you'd actually be right, because it's about to get a lot worse. And I mean a lot. October 14th, the Game and Users update is here. Let's see, what did this update add? It added barely readable fonts, constant scaling issues, a layout that makes you need a magnifying glass, usernames being unnecessarily cut off, individual level runs not displaying properly, leaderboard categories straight up disappearing, inconsistent navigation buttons to sift through categories, publicly blasting people's followed games out of nowhere, elements not displaying properly on light mode, which maybe that's a good thing because I don't really trust anyone who uses light mode everywhere. Oh, and I hope you've enjoyed the increasing amount of ads. And while I probably missed a multitude of other things, there is one more bug that was worse than all the previously mentioned things combined. A comment section on every single run. And you want to know the best part? It had no word filters and allowed you to post images. Do I even need to tell you how this ended up? Can I even show any of these comments? There was 0 options for users or communities to toggle these comments, and many individuals and entire communities boycotted these changes until they were reversed, or at least changed in some way, because how can you get any worse than this? Most notably, the Fallout series and the Simpsons Hit and Run communities completely just silenced any leaderboard activity until any of this was changed. And the second community I just mentioned, I personally remember at the time notably had an egregious amount of harassment and spam, and I remember that week the record holder Liquid Wi-Fi just straight up deleted all their runs because it was just really ugly. Let's see what they said on Twitter. Please reply below with your bug reports and feedback. We want to hear all of it, good and bad. Oh my god. Needless to say, only 5 days later, a lot was updated, with features that should just be common sense, such as anti-spam and privacy and moderation toggles. Who at ELO went, you know what speedrunners are most concerned about? Not being able to comment on runs. Have y'all ever heard of Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Discord, I don't know, Neopets? I don't know what people use. A leaderboard does not need a comment section. This was the last thing on anyone's mind. And following this, just like you'd expect, a solid amount of both individual runners and entire communities disabled this feature as a whole, and to this day it's pretty much just a sore spot on the website that both users and the site itself just kind of pretend that it doesn't even exist. Not too long after this, they once again announced more bug updates that literally no one cared about. Fixing direct site messages? I mean really, is that your priority? Cause like, that is the last place anyone chats with somebody. It'd make more sense to talk to other runners on Tinder than speedrun.com messages. I kid you not. Maybe y'all should just look at the 84 open issues presented to you on GitHub that span back to 2015. Just think about that. Your oldest open issue was posted 2 weeks after America finally decided gay people existed. Like, does ELO even know about this page? I really doubt it. And things have only gotten worse as we get to the current year. In late March, I straight up thought my computer got infected with some adware or something because when I logged into the page, it was littered with ads for this game called Dungeon Defenders. You might as well have told me that I was downloading Dora the Explorer to search for Pirate's Treasure USA.zip from verysafelegitRoms.com, because half the page was just a sketchy advertisement. And while this shameless advertisement was short-lived, it was definitely a sudden middle finger to any user frequently using the site. What if I told you that there was still something even more ridiculous? I logged on to moderate runs one night, and I saw this sketchy boost button in the top right corner, and once again, I thought it was something sketchy that happened to me, but nope. April 14th, 2022. Introducing Supporter. By popular request, we're introducing a feature we're calling Supporter. It offers a site-wide ad-free Oh my god, oh no. You're telling me that these fools thought complaining about ads meant that people wanted to pay $4 a month to remove said ads? Like, you can't make this up. And oh, but don't worry, you get to once a month give ad-free experiences to 3 other people in your community, and get access to an exclusive supporter form. What? Okay, I just want to say, I'm already paying every month for streaming services, my phone, YouTube Premium, on top of supporting creators on Patreon and Twitch, and you want to tell me at the same time that you expect me to pay $4 to use a glorified spreadsheet littered with ads? I just canceled my Spotify subscription, so who is expecting me to pay for this pile of garbage? I can't wait to pay money to be harassed and be completely ignored. I have 0 words for this besides saying that this is the most tone-deaf thing I have ever heard from a product that I personally have spent so much time using. And if someone from ELO happens to watch this, I want to let you know right now that whether you are meaning to or not, The general speedrun community is steadily turning against you, and day by day, I 100% honestly think that we are one step closer to this site being replaced. It feels like once a month at this rate, someone makes a tool to extract leaderboard and user data from speedrun.com, and many promising open source alternatives such as leaderboards.gg have been heavily worked on for quite a while now. And if things stay exactly how they are, or get even worse, I seriously think by the end of 2023 that speedrun.com at the very least will have some very serious competition. It's already happened with other speedrun websites such as Speedruns Live, which I may or not be covering that sooner or later. Let me know if you want me to blab on about that as well. I really don't have a proper outro for today, because it's just so depressing to see such a glorious project be stepped on by a team of people that have zero clue what they are doing. And maybe if the company focused on making an actual decent product, rather than pumping out news articles and how do you do fellow kids-esque tweets, then maybe we wouldn't be here. Anyways, thank you so much for watching.